Welcome to another edition of your Honor Series for the Effective Living Series 2023 on the theme 2023 Starter Pack. My name is Bernard Avle. This week we're focusing on emotional and mental health imperatives, and we're wrapping up the week with a conversation around managing or improving your emotional health or reinventing your emotional health. My guest is Dr. Emmanuel Hobson, who's a certified counseling psychologist. He's also an ADR and conflict resolution expert. He's a member of the Farm Life team on Citi FM. Every Saturday morning he's on. Doc, great to have you.
Great to have you.
How are you
doing?
doing?
Great to be here. Great.
Transforming your emotional health is the topic I've given you.
Okay.
But just tell us what you do. You are a counseling psychologist. I haven't really heard that. I hear of counselors, I hear of psychologists. I didn't know there was the same thing.
Okay, you are a counselor and you are also a psychologist. So, a blend of counseling and psychology, because they do same thing, but at a point they are also working on different things at the same time. So putting it together, counseling and psychology, because that engages a broader perspective of dealing with psycho-emotional and therapeutic issues.
And you also do conflict resolution.
Yes.
And you are an ADR, as well as ADR.
Conflict resolution, ADR, is alternative dispute resolution.
Okay.
So I'm a conflict expert and alternative dispute resolution expert, and I lecture at the School of Law, University of Ghana. ADR.
So instead of the master's adversarial legal litigation, there are things like mediation,
conciliation, mediation, arbitration, which is called MEDAP. And God being so good, I developed the methodology called the CounseMed approach as well.
CounseMed approach.
Which is a hybrid of counseling and mediation, which looks at the human psychology in conflict situations, because most of the time the traditional approach to conflict resolution always deal with the substantive issues, forgetting about the human factor behind the situations and the issues they are dealing with. So having research into how the human factor, the human psyche, the human psychology, the human emotion bear on our day-to-day living, and that also influences our interpersonal relationship, because our interpersonal relationships is largely dependent on our intrapersonal relationship. So if you want to deal with conflict interpersonally and you ignore what the individual is going through intrapersonally, and you want to resolve it not from a litigation point of view, but from an amicable resolution perspective, then these emotions also need to be appreciated.
I see. So we're talking about transforming your emotional health.
Yeah.
And when we talk about emotional health, what are we talking about?
Talking about emotional health, first of all, I want to look at it from the human perspective primarily, because as human beings, those of us who believe in the trichotomy kind of theory, which means that the human being is a spirit, having a soul, and living in a body. And when you take this trichotomy into consideration, you realize that the human person in the inside is rather the person's emotion, the person's mind, and the person's will. So it means that the person in the inside, between the spirit and the soul, is what you find the mind, the will, and then the emotion of the person, which to me forms a larger part of the person, which is about 85% of the person. As for the body, it's just about 15%.
Wow.
So the person we are talking about, who go through the various challenges and difficulties, which also define his life and environment, is about 85% in the inside, which is the mind, the will, and then the emotion. So you cannot separate the will, the mind, and the emotion from the person and still get the person. Well, the problem we have most of the time is that should anything happen to the body, maybe I have a fracture, I'll be put in POP. So people will appreciate that this is the fracture I have. But what about if the person in the inside is fractured? What about if the emotion is fractured? What about if the person's mind is underestimated, not taken into consideration? What about the person's will is trampled upon? What about the person's emotion being abused in the inside? So certainly in interpersonal relationships, we need to understand the role our emotion play in the general perspective of taking human beings into consideration.
So in transforming one's emotional health, what are we talking about? We say we want to transform your emotional. What are we saying?
We are talking about how to look at the contributive factors to your emotion and how to look at them to become well balanced and healthy. Okay. Because there are a lot of things that contribute to your emotional status, which also will include maybe number one, your person type.
Okay.
Then number two, have psychoclinical issues, which are biological, which is also looking at the various hormonal exchanges and their contributive factors. So first we look at you, the person, your formation, your makeup, your proclivities, your idiosyncratical responses, from your intrapersonal perspective, what you are made up for, and how do you operate as a person before you were born. So when you were born also, you go through different kind of stages to become who you are today. You go through parental upbringing, you go through environmental contributive factors, including the school you attend, the subject you study, the role models you have seen in your life, how you have been brought up, the people who contributed into your life in one way or the other, even the friends you make. Then we talk about the geographical location, and then also that also influences your life and who you are becoming. Then we talk about your life experiences, what you have gone through. Have you received enough love? Have you been appreciated in life? What are some of the challenges you have gone through in life? In these things, we develop different kind of coping mechanism in order to stay afloat. So if you go through some of these challenges and possibly have developed some kind of coping mechanism, and maybe these coping mechanisms are not very adaptive, and you just use them in order to cope with a situation, and once they have been rewarded, you can keep them as a tradition, then that becomes a pattern of your life. And then as if it's not enough, then you get to a stage where you want to develop your personality because you want to prove and show how people should appreciate you. So with that one, it's not even realistic. Most of the time, it feels like a mask, because you want to perceive, how will I want to be accepted? How will I want to be appreciated? Then you put yourself in that kind of mode. So actually, talking about emotional health, these are some of the things that you have to look at and to know how to manage yourself. And that is why emotional issues are very complex, because they define how you define yourself, how you interpret your world, how you define other people, and how you relate with them.
Brilliant. This is the Effective Living series. My guest is Dr. Emmanuel Hobson, and today we're talking about transforming your emotional health and a lot of things to work through. The intrapersonal, determining the interpersonal, and also man being a triune or tripartite being, and the interplay. And he also says the emotions and the spirit probably are a larger part of the person than the physical that we see. And then also he talks about how to identify and recognize your emotions based on all of those things. So Doc, when we say somebody understands their emotions,
yes,
what does it mean? How does a person get to understand their own emotions?
The first thing for the person to understand his or her emotion is to understand themselves first, which is their makeup. I remember I was reading something about Miles Monroe's explanation, and he was saying that the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but the greatest tragedy is to be on this earth without really knowing who you are until you pass away. There is one program in at the Kofi Annan Peace Center which we always write on. Is a 10 paper that students write on most of the time. we say, who am I? If you ask somebody who you are or who are you, the most important thing they will talk about is their name, where they come from, the work they do, and the rest will be the achievements they have made in life. Unfortunately, that is not you. The you in the you is the ability to appreciate your strength, your weaknesses, and how you interchangeably work out to mitigate the weaknesses and maximize the strength, and which also help you to be able to interrelate with others and then also impact your life, impact others, and impact society. So lacking your self-knowledge is the greatest challenge you will have as a person. So to be able to deal with your emotional health, it starts first of all with identifying who.
But how soon or how early in a person's life do they get in touch with their emotions?
They get in touch with their emotion right from childhood. The problem is that as children, they don't have the language to explain the kind of emotion they are going through. But that doesn't mean that they don't go through what they are going through. It's only that they don't have the expression. Because a child cannot tell you, I'm feeling irritated, I am paranoid, I am angry, I am afraid, I am anxious, I don't know how I am feeling. Children cannot say that, but yet they are going through something. They cannot explain it. So from childhood, yes, we go through certain emotional states. And then from when we are growing up, then we begin to put name and begin to link the emotion we go through with our everyday language with which we can express it. And Bernard, it is not only expressing it in language, but in your demeanor. That is why most of the emotional expressions can be seen in the person's facial expression, the person's non-verbal communication, and all that. You can see when somebody is sad through the person's face, and you ask, what is going on with you? You can see the person's face, you see the person is angry. What makes you know that the person is angry? It is because of an expression that the person has put up on his face or in his demeanor or the way he go about things. So we know our emotions from childhood, but we don't know how to explain it. But later on in life, we are able to link it with this. And even when we become adults, we still are learning how to link some emotions to language or wording that can explain them.
I spoke to Dr. Delali Fiagbe on, I think, Tuesday, and he was saying there's the biological, the psychological, and the social dimensions of mental and emotional health. So basically saying some of the issues are biological. He said, for example, if you don't have enough dopamine in your system, it can affect your enjoyment of certain things. Then he talks about how the society and social interaction can also affect a person's emotions. And then it also talks about thinking patterns. I don't know if you can just make any comment on that. The biological dimensions of this, the fact that some of it are just chemicals, and the fact that some of these are just interactions with society, and some of it is happening between your ears.
Yeah, they are all interrelated. But what happens most of the time, you know, our emotions are much developed by our limbic system from a biological point of view. And there are a series of chemicals who also influences our mood when we are talking about emotion. Then we are also talking about the interpersonal relationship with our environment, which also contribute to that. So these three perspectives will let somebody know what kind of emotion the person is going through, and even to be able to give interpretation to it in the first place. Now, when we talk about the chemical dimension, or we call it neurotransmitters, which also help our hormones to influence our mood, because the mood is derived from our hormones, and the hormones is derived from our limbic system, which is our mind or our brain. Now, let's say that the person intrapersonally is already prone to anger. So certainly the person will secrete certain hormones more than certain hormones. And certain hormones will react in the persons much more differently and on higher dose than others. There's somebody who is already prone to joy, happiness, laughter, and all that. So the kind of chemicals that will also associate with the person's mood and also trigger some kind of emotional expressions will also be different. And then somebody who is not bothered about anything, it also has different kind of chemicals that are secreted. So there are certain type of people that are prone for certain level of hormones to be secreted much more than the others. However, the three parts contribute so much into explaining and expressing the individual's emotion. That is why you cannot just generically group emotional issues to suit everybody. Because individuals are different, what they go through are different. Even the social construct that we are talking about, the interpretation of the individual may be different from one person's interpretation, even though the event may be the same. And the interpretation may be coming from the individual's past, present, and how he's interpreting his future. It may even come from the person's value system. It can even come from the person's culture and the person's geographical contributing factors to who the person has become.
Is there anything as optimal emotion makeup? Or when we say somebody's in good emotional health, what does it mean? Can you give me an example?
Okay. To be in a good emotional health is very interesting. Number one, is the person able to observe how he feels and has been able to identify whether he's in a good mood or in a bad mood. It means the person has foreknowledge about his makeup and how he functions. And then secondly, be able to be comfortable with other people. There are some people, because they are not comfortable with themselves, it is very difficult to be comfortable with other people. Gone are those days when we say that the person is in a good mental health or good emotional state. The person should have absence of mental disease. Then we think the person is mentally or emotionally healthy. But now the definition has gone far beyond that. It is absence of the mental disease, ability to manage your life, ability to go through hassles and bustles of life, ability to cope with challenges and difficulties of life, and then maintain balance amidst the challenges. And then not that alone, but contribute to your personal well-being and development and that of society. Then you are emotionally balanced, which means that you must be comfortable with yourself, comfortable with other people. You must not underestimate yourself or overrate yourself. You must not try to create an impression which is not true about yourself. You must make sure that you have been able to create an environment that is peaceable to yourself and to others. And then also your interpersonal relationship, because we are relational beings. You are able to not look at things from your own point of view alone, but also appreciate how others will also feel by the way you are expressing your feeling. And that is why emotional intelligence or emotional maturity plays a major role in every aspect of our lives as a leader, as a husband, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, as any kind of person you are, to hold any position and be successful in life. Certainly, you must have emotional maturity.
This is still the Effective Living series. This is the 4th day of our 2nd week. We're looking at transforming your emotional health. This is part of our emphasis on emotional and mental health for the Effective Living series. My guest, Dr. Emmanuel Hobson. Doc, maybe help us to appreciate some emotional words, because I mean, we've been using the word emotion, but one of my previous speakers was talking about the spectrum of emotion, whether we can even give language to emotion. So he was grouping emotions into the glad emotions, the sad emotions, the bad emotions, and then the mad emotions. So anger, like vexation, being on the extreme side, sad, could be depressed or lonely, glad, could be excited, happy. So if you just walk us through the blend of emotions that a healthy person needs, because of course you can't be happy all the time. So again, he also talks about how we don't even have language for some of our emotions. So he did a test, he asked me how I felt, and I mentioned 3 or 4 emotions. Well, once you have even mentioned the emotion, it means that you're in touch with your emotions.
Yes.
So if you can just walk us through some of the emotions that we need to be aware of and not suppress, which then can help us manage them better.
Okay. When you talk about emotion and the different kind and types of emotion, research is still going on. At a point, we came to 27 different type of emotion, from 6, then from 4, from 3, then we come to 4, then we come to 12, then we come to 27, now we come to 30, now we are even looking at some 30,000 and plus kind of thing.
30,000 emotions.
Yes, because there are various things that are going on in the human personality, in the human emotion that probably may not have been happening in previous years. And when we take even now, the things we are going through, when you take a young boy or a young girl right now, things they know, things are triggered in them may not be things that we have gone through in the years past. So now there are different ways of redefining, renaming, and even reinforming the way we even approach the way we name some of these things. So the major ones, if take for instance you ask somebody, if you talk about emotion, when you hear the word emotion, what are some of the words that quickly run through your mind? I think the first one that ran through our mind is anger.
Yeah. I was thinking, well, yeah.
Then the other may be fear. Then the other may be sadness. Then we may talk about excitement, happiness, disgust, dissatisfaction, amusement, love. We may talk about surprises, being awe. Is also a kind of emotion we go through. Then envy, jealousy, embarrassment, guilt, shame. You see, there are different kind of emotions. But even if we take anger alone, we are looking now, they just say anger. And anger, we associate it with the various rush flow of adrenaline and cortisol that will trigger us to take actions and respond. But now, anger has now also been redefined. We have about 13 different types of anger when we talk about anger alone. You are talking about behavioral anger, you are talking about verbal anger, you are talking about self-inflicted anger, you are talking about retaliatory anger, you are talking about paranoid anger, you are talking about judgmental anger, you are talking about retaliatory anger. So even if you take anger alone out of emotion, 10 dimensions of anger. And when you come to therapy to want to deal with anger, and you want to say you are just dealing with the person's anger, then you have failed already as a therapist. You must get to that dimension of continuing education to get to know that if I'm going to be dealing with anger, I need to even first of all understand the type of anger the person is going through. That is the only way I can even identify what are the contributing factors and the cause of that particular anger. So certainly we have different kind of emotions. So it is always good, first of all, if you know yourself very well, it is very easy to know the kind of emotions you are prone to. So when it comes to different kind of difficulties of life and challenges, even in happy moments, the extent to which one person will go, even in happy moments, the extent to which somebody will express excitement will be different from how the other person will express it. So for instance, you take somebody who is a phlegmatic and is very happy. You buy a new car for a phlegmatic, throw the key at phlegmatic, he will just say, and you get so disappointed. You feel he's not appreciating what you have done for them. But give it to a sanguine person. You see him jumping all over the place, making you know that indeed. And it is not about the person who is even receiving it alone, but the giver. What is the person's predisposition of his person type to what he is doing? And what is the person's expectation? So these, apart from all these, also help us to appreciate how the emotion help you to perceive life and interpret other people. Because coming to the theory of perception itself, an emotional interpretation or triggers to perception is already another big area for us to understand, to be able to navigate through its challenges.
So your closing comments, what must people do to transition or get their emotions to work for them properly?
The first thing I want to say is know yourself. As much as you can, try to know yourself.
Okay.
And I want to entreat for those of you out there who want to know yourself. We have the ability, we have the technology, we have the lab analysis that will help you to know yourself. So you will not be just placing yourself in assumption and interpretation of other people. So when they ask you who you are, you'll be able to tell who exactly you are, because that influences your decision, your choices, and even help you to manage your life. You don't want to leave this world without really coming to know who you are. So you're just trying to be like other people till you die without really coming to know yourself. So when you get in touch, we can give you what you have to do in order to get your lab analysis so that you can be so proud of yourself and even your children. So you don't struggle to know what your children will do in the future and all that. That is just a plus that you can give to yourself as your New Year package. And then you need to actually question your opinions of life. Take responsibility. And also don't forget to know that life is a process. There may be some good times and there may also be some bad times. Many people don't know how to understand the dynamics of life. So they become so fixated. And once things don't go the way they feel it should go, the first thing is they get disappointed in themselves. There are still some people that can do that to themselves than other people.
Wow.
So the ability to know yourself and to be able to appreciate life is a process helps you. And then also to trust in your abilities.
Okay.
Learn to improve on yourself.
Okay.
And then also seek help.
Fantastic.
And if you are going through a particular emotion, don't attack the emotion. Attack what is going through your mind. Because your mind is a seed to your emotion.
I'm sure there's a lot of opportunity. We'll be talking about this more in future times.
Yes.
Dr. Hobson, thank you so much for speaking to us. He's been our guest on the 4th and final day of week 2 of the Effective Living series, where we focused on emotional health. Transforming your emotional health was our topic. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be with you next time. Bye-bye.